I work the evening shift at a warehouse just outside Chicago. The place starts to quiet down after 5. Trucks gone, lights dimmed, the whole yard settling into silence. But most evenings, right after school, a group of boys shows up. They ride their bikes through the empty lots, toss balls against the loading docks, play tag between the shadows of old containers. I never chased them off. They weren't causing trouble. And truth is, their laughter made this forgotten place feel almost human again. One Tuesday, I noticed something different. The boys had gathered behind the old shipping bay, quieter than usual, all looking toward the same spot. I stepped out of my booth and walked over. That's when I saw him. A German Shepherd puppy, maybe 6 or 7 months old. Thin, dirty, legs too long for his frame. He was lying on a flattened cardboard box next to a rusted barrel, alert but still, watching everyone with those wide, cautious eyes. One of the boys, David, was crouched beside him, holding out a half-eaten burger. The pup inched forward, sniffed it, then took it gently and backed away to his corner. "He's been living here," David said quietly. "I think someone left him." I didn't say much, just nodded and walked back to my post, but I watched. David kept coming back. Every evening, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone, always with something for the pup. Chicken, bread, crackers, and always with a gentle voice like he was talking to a scared friend who didn't speak the same language. One evening, David pulled something bright from his backpack, a red sock. He waved it, laughed, then tossed it gently. The pup jumped up, caught it, and for the first time I saw his tail move. Not just a wag. Joy. Real, reckless joy. From that day on, the sock was always with him. David named him Rocky. Rocky would chew on the sock, sleep with it, tucked under his chin, paw at it like it was the only thing in the world that belonged to him. He slept every night beside that old barrel, curled up on a pallet of broken wood, holding that sock like it was family. And every evening, like clockwork, David came back. Until one day, he didn't. At first, I didn't think much of it. Kids get busy, parents ground them, school piles up. But then a second day passed, then a third, and still no sign of David. Rocky waited each evening, just like before. He'd sit near the edge of the loading dock, ears every time tires crunched in the gravel, every time a bike chain rattled in the distance. But no one came. The red sock was still there. He didn't chew it anymore. Just kept it close, tucked under his chin, like it was the last piece of something good he didn't want to lose. I started leaving food out. A bowl of dry kibble I picked up from the corner store, fresh water. At first, he didn't touch it, just sniffed and walked away. He looked thinner, slower, like he was trying to hold himself together, waiting for something that wasn't coming. On the 4th evening, I sat outside my booth longer than usual. Rocky didn't move when I approached. He just looked up at me, eyes dull, tail still. That playful pup I used to watch chasing a sock through the dirt was gone. All that was left was something small and quiet and waiting. I asked one of the other boys, Daniel, if he'd seen David. He looked away, kicked a rock, and mumbled, "Didn't you hear?" "Hear what?" I asked, standing still. "He got hit," Daniel said, "on his bike, a couple blocks from here. He's in the hospital, not waking up." I don't remember what I said back. My chest went cold. I looked at Rocky, who had laid his head back down beside the sock. He didn't know. Not really. But maybe he felt it. That night I drove to the hospital. I left Rocky outside, tied loosely to a tree across the street, wrapped in an old flannel I kept in my car. He didn't fight it, just watched me go, eyes heavy. Inside, I found the pediatric wing and asked about David. The nurse hesitated, but when I told her I wasn't family, just someone who knew him from the neighborhood, she softened and pointed me toward room 312. David was there, pale, small. So different from the boy who used to laugh while throwing a sock across a cracked concrete yard. Tubes, machines, monitors blinking like distant stars. His parents sat nearby, eyes sunken, holding each other's hands but not really holding on. I introduced myself, told them I worked nearby. That I'd seen David with a dog, a stray, really, but more than that, something special. He called him Rocky, I said. They were always together. That dog's been waiting for him, every single day. The father looked up first, the mother followed, her face tightening. "We don't want a dog near him," she said, her voice sharp, tired. "Not here, not now." I nodded, tried to smile. "Of course, I just thought you should know." They didn't respond. I walked out slowly, heart heavier with each step. I crossed the street and knelt beside Rocky. His tail wagged once, hopeful. I looked into his eyes. "I'm sorry, buddy," I whispered. "They said no. I tried. I really did." He stared at me, then turned his head toward the hospital, and I swear, I knew he wasn't done. I sat with him for a while, thinking he might give up, that he'd follow me back to the warehouse, maybe curl up beside the heater like he used to near the barrel. But Rocky didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the glass doors of the hospital. He was waiting, still hoping, still believing. It was getting late. I stood, stretched my legs, and glanced at the sky. Snow was starting to fall. Just a light dusting, barely sticking, but it made everything feel quieter. Still. I leaned down to untie the flannel from the tree, but before I could finish, the automatic doors whooshed open, and Rocky bolted. I shouted his name, out of instinct, not logic, but he was already halfway across the street, his paws slipping on the wet pavement, sock still hanging from his mouth like a lifeline. He ducked under the opening doors before they could close. I ran after him, heart pounding. A security guard saw me burst through the entrance, eyes wide. "You can't have a dog in here," he snapped. I didn't stop. I just shouted, "He's here for a reason," and kept going. Rocky didn't bark, didn't run wild. He moved through those sterile halls like he'd been there before, like he knew exactly where he was going. 3rd floor, room 312. By the time I caught up, the hallway was empty. Room 312's door was closed, but just beneath the frame, I saw it, a tail, barely wagging, low to the ground. I peeked in. David's parents were gone, maybe stepped out for coffee or to breathe for a second, and there was Rocky, curled up under the hospital bed, sock between his paws, his head resting against one of David's feet. The boy hadn't moved, but Rocky had found him anyway. I stood in the doorway, not sure whether to cry or apologize. Then I heard a soft voice behind me. "Is that him?" A nurse, young, kind eyes. I nodded. "His name's Rocky. They were always together. He snuck in." She looked at the boy, at the dog, then back at me. "I won't say anything," she said, "as long as he stays hidden, quiet." "He will," I whispered. "He just wants to be near him." From that night on, Rocky never left. He stayed tucked under the bed, hidden in the shadows, only coming out when the room was quiet. The nurse brought him food when she could. I visited after every shift, checked on him, gave him water, whispered updates he probably didn't need, but he listened anyway. Every night he curled beside David's feet. Every night he watched him, protected him, waited. And then 7 days later, it happened. I came in just after midnight. Rocky was at his usual post, but this time he was sitting up, alert, staring at the bed. David's eyes were open. He blinked, slow, groggy, then looked down, and the second he saw Rocky, his whole face changed. His lips trembled, his hand reached down, and that dog, that broken, abandoned puppy, he jumped onto the bed and buried himself into the boy's chest. David laughed, or maybe cried, I couldn't tell, but he held him like he'd never let go. And I knew, right then, neither of them would ever be alone again. The room filled with noise before anyone said a word. The beeping of monitors, the sudden shuffle of footsteps outside, the sound of something breaking inside my chest. I watched as Rocky curled against David like he belonged there, because he did. The red sock was still in his mouth, damp and worn, but he didn't let it go. Not now. Not after everything. The nurse who had kept his secret rushed in, then froze when she saw David's eyes open. Her hands flew to her mouth. "He's awake," she whispered, like saying it too loud might break the moment. Rocky turned to her, then back to David, tail thumping softly against the mattress. David looked around the room, dazed. His voice was barely audible. "Is this real?" The nurse leaned over him gently. "It is, sweetheart. You're okay. You've been resting for a while." He blinked slowly, reached a shaky hand toward Rocky, and whispered, "You waited." I had to step out into the hallway. My legs felt too weak. I leaned against the wall and tried to breathe. The parents arrived moments later, voices raised, confusion in their eyes. "Why is there a dog in his room?" the mother asked, sharp, panicked. The nurse didn't flinch. "He was already here when David woke up." Her tone didn't leave room for argument. The father stepped forward, looked through the glass, and saw them, his son and that dog tangled together like they were part of the same story. His face softened. His shoulders dropped. He didn't say a word. Inside, David was smiling, not a big smile, but real, raw, alive. The next few days moved fast. Doctors, tests, quiet celebrations. The staff called it a miracle, but I knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was loyalty. It was love. It was Rocky, refusing to leave, believing so hard it pulled David back. I kept visiting. Rocky was allowed to stay under one condition. He had to be registered as an emotional support companion. The hospital waived every rule. No one questioned it. David's parents started spending more time in the room. The mother sat by the window, holding her son's hand. The father took phone calls in the hallway, but always glanced in as he passed, watching Rocky like he was still trying to understand. One afternoon, I brought a bag of dog food and a small collar with Rocky's name stitched into it. David lit up when he saw it. "He has a name tag now," he said, rubbing Rocky's ears. "You gave him the name." "Game Pass," I told him. "Only fair he wears it proudly." We sat together, the three of us, while the machines clicked and hummed. Rocky rested his head on David's lap. His tail wagged every time the boy spoke. He didn't need words to understand. He just listened. On the morning of David's discharge, I waited outside the front doors. The hospital staff wheeled him out into the sun, wrapped in a blanket, Rocky trotting beside him like a bodyguard with paws. The parents stood beside the car, their expressions tight, unreadable. David looked up at them and said one thing: "He saved me." And then something changed. The mother knelt down, held out her hand. Rocky stepped forward and pressed his head into her palm. She swallowed hard, nodded once, then looked at me. "We'll take him," she said, "if he'll come with us." I didn't say anything, just crouched down, scratched Rocky behind the ears, and whispered, "Go on, boy, that's your family now." He looked at me for a long second, just a second, and then jumped into the car beside David. That red sock still clutched in his mouth, and just like that, they drove away, whole, together, home. I still see them sometimes. Not often, but enough. They come by the warehouse every now and then, David on his bike, helmet snug, Rocky trotting alongside like his shadow. The first time I saw them after the hospital, it stopped me cold. David had grown, not taller, really, but brighter. There was light in him again, and Rocky, he looked like a different dog. Filled out, healthy, fur thick and clean, still carried that same red sock in his mouth like a medal. They didn't stop the first time, just waved. But that wave meant everything. A few weeks later, they came by again. David jumped off his bike, ran up, and threw his arms around me. No words, just a hug. Rocky stayed close, tail wagging, looking up like he remembered every long night on the loading dock. "Thank you," David said finally, "for letting me see him, for not giving up." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I didn't do much. He did all the hard parts. David grinned and held up something in his hand, a collar tag, shiny and new. On the front, Rocky. On the back, "If found, please return to David." We sat on the old concrete steps of the loading dock and talked. David told me how he'd had dreams of Rocky while he was in the coma. Not just random flashes, but vivid ones. "He was lying next to me," he said, eyes wide. "I could feel him. He was warm. I think that's what brought me back." Rocky dropped the sock on David's lap and nudged it like he was saying, "You forgot this part." They stayed for an hour. Then 2. David told me how Rocky wouldn't sleep anywhere but at the foot of his bed, how he followed him from room to room, how when David had bad dreams, Rocky would rest his head on his chest until the shaking stopped. "They told me I might not walk right again," he said, "that I'd have trouble with balance. But Rocky helps. When I hold his collar, I don't feel scared." That hit me harder than I expected. Before they left, David turned to me and said something I still think about every night. "I didn't just find a dog," he said. "I found my best friend." I watched them ride off again, one boy, one dog, and that red sock bouncing in Rocky's mouth like a flag waving in the wind. After they disappeared down the street, I walked back to my booth. The warehouse was quiet again. Same rust, same shadows, same cold air. But it didn't feel empty. It felt full of something I couldn't name. Hope, maybe, or love, or the echo of a sock and a heartbeat that refused to give up. Either way, it was enough. A few months passed and the city shifted seasons again. Spring gave way to summer. The nights got warmer. The air buzzed with cicadas and the smell of fresh-cut grass. But the warehouse stayed the same. Same cracked pavement, same rusted gates, same quiet after 6 o'clock. And still, every so often, Rocky and David came back. Sometimes they brought other kids. Sometimes just the two of them. David always with that bright smile, Rocky always with his red sock faded now, frayed at the edges, but still held like treasure. They'd run through the yard like nothing had ever changed, like they hadn't lived through pain and waiting and hospital rooms. One afternoon, they brought lemonade. David handed me a cup and said, "You're the reason we're together, you know that?" I shook my head. "No, kid, that was all you." But he wouldn't let it go. "You let him stay," he said. "You watched him, you fed him, you gave him a chance." Rocky barked once, like he agreed. We sat there for a while, sipping lemonade in the shade of the loading dock. Rocky lay between us, chewing his sock lazily, tail thumping now and then. David told me he was writing a story for school about the warehouse, about a dog who waited, about the people who noticed. "He's more than a pet," David said quietly. "He's a part of me." There was a pause. Then he added, "I think when I was in the hospital, when everything went black, I could hear his breathing, like a heartbeat next to mine." I didn't say anything, just reached down and scratched Rocky behind the ears. He leaned into it like he always had. Later that evening, after they left, I stayed outside longer than usual. The sun dipped below the skyline, painting the yard in gold and soft shadows. For a place that had always felt abandoned, forgotten by the city, it suddenly felt sacred, like something good had happened there, something worth remembering. I walked over to the old pallet near the barrel, Rocky's old bed. The red sock wasn't there anymore, but I could still picture it, still see that little pup curled up, waiting for a boy who loved him enough to come back. That night, before I locked the gate, I nailed a small wooden sign above the dock. Rocky waited here. Just that. Nothing fancy, nothing loud, but it felt right. And I knew that no matter what happened, no matter how many trucks came and went, how many kids grew up and moved on, this place would always hold the memory of something pure. A dog, a boy, a red sock, and a love that refused to be broken. Sometimes I still walk that yard alone, but I'm never really alone. One evening in late August, a storm rolled in over the city. One of those Chicago storms that starts with heavy clouds and ends with lightning splitting the sky. The warehouse shook with the wind, the metal siding rattling like bones. I stayed later than usual that night, checking the fence line, securing loose pallets, making sure nothing would fly off and break someone's windshield by morning. Just as I finished, headlights lit up the yard. A familiar bike skidded to a stop near the loading dock. David jumped off, rain already soaking his sleeves. Rocky was with him, soaked but wagging, red sock clutched tight in his teeth. "You two are insane," I called out, waving them toward the booth. David grinned. He wouldn't stop whining until we came. I think he missed this place. I opened the door, let them in, dried Rocky off with an old towel. The three of us huddled together inside the tiny booth as rain pounded the roof. Thunder cracked overhead, but Rocky didn't flinch. He just lay down by David's feet like it was the safest place in the world. "Sometimes I think he knows more than I do," David said, staring out the fogged-up window. I smiled. "He definitely listens better." We laughed, and for a while we just sat in the storm-sound silence. No phones, no distractions. Just a boy, a dog, and the man who had once watched them from a distance, and now couldn't imagine this world without them. "I had nightmares after the accident," David said suddenly. His voice was quiet, careful. I'd wake up thinking I was still under the car, that I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I didn't interrupt. "But then I'd feel him," he continued, "at my feet, that warmth, that weight, like he was holding me in place, reminding me I was real." Rocky looked up at that moment as if he understood. Maybe he did. "And now?" I asked. "Now," David said, smiling. "I don't dream about the accident anymore. I dream about the warehouse and the games and him chasing that sock across the lot." We sat until the storm eased. The rain softened to a drizzle and the sky turned from charcoal to silver. Before they left, David reached into his backpack. "We made this," he said, handing me a framed photo. It was the three of us, me, him, and Rocky sitting on the warehouse steps. Rocky had the sock in his mouth. David was mid-laugh. "I hadn't even known someone took it." "We printed two," David said. "The other one's on my nightstand." I ran a hand over my face, trying not to choke up. "Thank you, kid. This means more than you know." He threw his arms around me. Rocky barked once, soft and happy. Then they were gone again, biking into the wet streets, fading into the mist like a memory you never want to lose. I hung the photo on the inside wall of the booth right above the radio. Now, when I sit through the long hours and the yard gets quiet again, I look up and see their faces. And it reminds me, this old place, this job, this watchful silence, it led me to something beautiful. Something I never asked for. Something I'll never forget. A few weeks later, I got a call from the school. It was the principal. She said David had mentioned me, talked about the warehouse, Rocky, everything. They were holding an assembly on kindness and resilience, and she asked if I'd be willing to come in and speak. I laughed at first. Me? I'm just a night guard. I don't give speeches. But when she said David would be speaking too, I couldn't say no. The day of the assembly, I put on my best shirt, washed the warehouse smell off my jacket. When I walked into that school gym, the noise hit me like a wave. Hundreds of kids in folding chairs buzzing with energy. But then I saw David at the front, standing behind a microphone, holding a folded piece of paper. And beside him, Rocky, wearing a bandana that said hero in big blue letters. David looked small behind the mic, but his voice didn't shake. Not once. He told them about the accident, about waking up in a hospital bed and finding the one face he didn't expect, his dog's. He told them how Rocky had waited, had snuck into the hospital, had warmed his feet, and never left his side. He saved me, David said, voice clear. Not just my life, but everything inside me, the scared parts, the hurt parts. Rocky made me whole again. Silence filled the room, then applause. Thunderous, honest applause. When it was my turn, I didn't say much. Just told them I'd seen a lot from my little booth. That kindness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's feeding a dog after work. Sometimes it's letting a kid play in peace. Sometimes it's choosing to believe in a tail wag and a red sock. Afterwards, kids came up to pet Rocky, ask questions, tell their own stories. One little girl said she had nightmares too, but maybe now she'd sleep with her dog closer. A teacher asked if Rocky could come visit her special needs classroom. David beamed. That night, back at the warehouse, I sat by the dock long after my shift ended. The city was quiet. Stars poked through the haze. I thought about how one forgotten lot, one stray dog, and one persistent boy had shifted the ground beneath my feet. I thought about how love doesn't always knock on your door. Sometimes it waits in the cold by a rusted barrel, holding a sock in its teeth and hoping someone sees it. And if you're lucky, if your heart's still open, you stop, you sit, you say yes, and everything changes. Rocky and David gave me that, a reason to believe again. A reminder that even in the loneliest places, joy can grow from broken ground, and that sometimes the smallest acts, feeding a hungry pup, staying quiet when it matters, letting two souls find each other, can echo louder than anything you'll ever say into a microphone. The warehouse eventually got sold. I'd heard rumors for months, developers sniffing around, city inspectors showing up with clipboards and polite lies. One morning, a man in a suit walked the yard with a tablet in hand and a smile too clean for a place like this. Said they were putting in condos. Modern, upscale, a new chapter for the neighborhood. I nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't tell him what had happened here, what had lived here. What still lingered in the corners of this cracked concrete yard. They gave us 60 days. I didn't say anything to David at first. Thought maybe it wasn't my place. But Rocky knew. He started lingering longer when they visited, sniffing around like he could sense the change. He'd sit at the edge of the dock long after David was ready to go, just watching the yard like he was memorizing it. Then one afternoon I told them. David didn't say much, just sat on the steps, knees pulled to his chest, Rocky's head resting on his lap. "Where will you go?" he asked quietly. "Not sure yet," I admitted. "They've got another site on the south side. Might transfer me there." He nodded, eyes fixed on the spot where the red sock had first landed. "It won't be the same." "No," I said. It won't. But then I looked at him, really looked at him, taller now, stronger, still with that light in his eyes, and Rocky, solid as ever, tail flicking gently with the breeze. "It doesn't have to be the same," I said. "You already took the best part with you." He looked up, brow furrowed. "You found him here," I said, "but he's not from this place. He's from you. That love, that bond, it goes wherever you go." He didn't answer right away. Just leaned down, pressed his forehead to Rocky's, and closed his eyes. When they left that day, they didn't ride off quickly. They walked their bikes down the alley, slowly, side by side. Rocky trotted between them, and just before they turned the corner, David looked back. I raised my hand. He raised his. 2 weeks later, I finished my last shift. I walked the yard one more time, past the fence where Rocky first waited, past the rusted barrel, the broken pallet, the spot where the red sock used to lie. I stood by the sign I'd nailed up months earlier. Rocky waited here. Then I pulled out a second plaque. Had it made special? Wood. Burned letters. And love found him. I nailed it just beneath the first, stepped back, and let the silence settle around me one last time. Some places don't need to last forever. They just need to matter while they do. A year has passed since the warehouse closed. The lot is gone now, flattened, fenced, scrubbed clean like it never held anything worth remembering. Where Rocky once slept beside a rusted barrel, there's now polished stone. Where David once chased him through the gravel, someone's parked luxury SUV. A courtyard stands where I used to sit and drink bad coffee from a paper cup, watching two souls find each other in the dust. And yet, it still lives in me. All of it. Sometimes I drive by just to see what's changed. But I don't stop. Not really. There's nothing left to hold on to out there. Everything that mattered from that place now walks on four legs beside a boy who once couldn't move. David sends updates, photos, videos, cards on the holidays with Rocky's paw print stamped in red ink like a signature. He tells me about their hikes, their camping trips, how Rocky still sleeps curled up at the foot of his bed, sock beside him like a sacred relic. The sock is patched now, held together by threads and memory, but Rocky guards it like treasure, always. One message hit me harder than the rest. David wrote, I started volunteering at the hospital, same wing I was in. Rocky comes with me. Some of the kids don't want to talk to anyone, but they talk to him, just like I did. I read that message 3 times, then once more, because that's what this was always about, wasn't it? Not just rescue, not just healing, but becoming. Rocky wasn't saved to live an ordinary life. He was saved so he could save, over and over again, quietly, gently, like only he could. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't paid attention that first day, if I'd chased the kids off, called animal control, turned a blind eye to a boy and a stray playing behind a warehouse. But I didn't, and that changed everything. I've since moved on to another job, different shift, different city. The nights are quieter now, less color, less chaos. But sometimes I close my eyes and hear the scrape of a bike tire against gravel, a boy laughing, a dog chasing a flash of red through the air. I hear life returning to broken places. I keep a photo of Rocky and David on my desk, the one David gave me framed, faded from sunlight now, but still warm, still full. And beneath it, taped to the edge of the frame, are 2 words I scribbled one night, alone in that booth. He waited. Because that's what started it all. A puppy who waited, a boy who loved, and a moment that asked me to see it, really see it, and say yes. And I did. And I always will. Sometimes people ask me why I tell this story. They say, it's just a dog, or that kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. But they're wrong. They're so wrong, because I saw it. I lived it. I saw a puppy wait in the cold night after night with nothing but a red sock and a heartbeat full of hope. I saw a boy give more love than he had words for, and a dog return that love with every breath. I saw what happens when the world turns away, and what happens when someone, just one person, decides not to. And I saw healing, real, honest healing, the kind you don't find in textbooks or hospitals, the kind that lives in quiet moments between 2 friends who found each other in the most unlikely place at the most unlikely time. Rocky wasn't just rescued. He became a rescuer. He carried a boy through darkness. He brought him back when no one else could. And now he carries others, kids who are scared, lonely, hurting. He shows up, lays beside them, and says, you're not alone. And that red sock, David still keeps it on his nightstand. Rocky doesn't play with it anymore. He's grown, settled, but it's there, faded, frayed, and sacred. A reminder of where they started, of what they survived, of what love can do when it's given the smallest space to bloom. So yes, I tell this story. I tell it because someone out there needs to hear it. Because somewhere, a puppy is waiting. Somewhere, a child is hoping. Somewhere, someone is standing at the edge of giving up. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remember Rocky. Maybe they'll remember that love doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be there. That presence can save a life. That patience can rewrite an ending. and that the quietest acts of kindness, like feeding a stray behind a warehouse or letting a tired boy play in peace, can echo through generations. So if you're reading this or listening or feeling something in your chest you can't explain, hold on to it, because somewhere out there, someone needs you to notice, to say yes, to wait, to love, just like Rocky did. Be their voice, be their hope, and never ever underestimate the power of one red sock and a dog who refused to leave.